Hello my Dotty family and welcome to my YouTube channel. Come and join me on this magical journey through the world of dot art. My name is Zelda and I am from the fairy realm. Today I would like to introduce you to some dotting exercises on how to actually dot. What you'll need for this exercise is of course your dotting tools. You're going to need a little bowl of water and your palette. How I structure my working surface is if you are right-handed, then you're going to place your palette to the right of your working surface, which means that you will be dotting like this. I've seen a lot of students who put their palettes on different places and they're almost reaching halfway across the table in order to reach their paint. So keep this on the right hand side, and then usually at the top of my surface is where I place all of my dotting tools, and I also place them in order of size, and I try and keep them that way. Because when I work with my patterns, I usually refer to my tools as use the 7mm or use the 8mm. It just makes it much easier to find the tools when you are looking for them. Now, how we hold our little dotting tools is you want to hold them as perpendicular as you possibly can to the dotting surface. So you want to always come out straight. So you want to also touch down on your surface every single time you make a dot. You don't want to squash your dot. I will show you the difference between squashing the dots and then actually just making your dot. And then if you have my tools, your finger grip is going to be on this side, which is going to give you a little bit more control on where your dots go. The other thing as well is that always place your hand down on surface to give you more stability and control. If you're going to be coming from the air, you can see already I'm trying to hold my hand as still as I possibly can, and it's already just moving. So this will just give you a lot more stability and control on where it goes. I actually had a lady who had Parkinson's disease attend one of my workshops, and she was so glad that she could find something where she just had a little bit more control, where she could actually do the craft. Okay, so when it comes to adding our paint, so I usually try and keep my paint as fresh as I possibly can. So I keep on adding fresh paint. If you have my paint at home, just shake the bottle before use. I have a couple of things in here that make sure that my paint stays a little bit wetter for longer as well. So you just want to shake those up before you use it at least once a day. Right, the amount that I put into my palette is about that much. I want to keep on using fresh paint all of the time, because I'll show you guys what the paint looks like when it starts drying and you don't get those beautiful round dots anymore. So also how deep you dip your tool is, a lot of my students just basically touch down over the side of the tool. It's just at the bottom of the tool, and that doesn't give you any consistency. So I dip my tool about, I would say, 1 millimeter deep. As you can see, it goes over the side of the tool. Okay, so that gives you enough. If you dip your tool way too deep, then you're going to have too much paint on your tool, and then your dot sizes are also going to vary. And from there, we're going to just softly touch down. You will see the paint expanding as I put the dot down, and that is my dot. I'm going to do another one. Dip it down, and then just do another one. So now you can see the amount of paint and the dot size is exactly the same. They're very consistent. That's because I touch down every single time. So don't be afraid to touch down. I'm just trying to zoom in here so you guys can see the dots a little bit better. Like that. So your dot always needs to look like the first one you put down. If it doesn't look like that, then the answer is always fresh paint. You will see whatever goes wrong with your dot, the answer to the universe is not 42, it is fresh paint. Right, then I want you guys, so once you get comfortable with just making a few dots, I want you guys to start practicing the spacing. So I try and get my dots about 1 millimeter away from each other. So keep in mind that the paint is still expanding every time you put the dot down, right? So there you can see, I'm kind of planning so that they are quite close without touching. So what I tell my students always is that Dots love a lot of friends, as close as possible. They just don't like being touched. So this is the spacing you want to aim for. And the reason for that is because then you're going to start seeing the structures of your designs instead of just a couple of random dots on your surface. Let me just quickly show you what it looks like when you squash a dot. There you can see the difference. So if your dots look like that, that means that you're basically taking out your stress on the dots. Okay, so I want you to loosen your grip and just put down the dot lightly, but you need to put it down. So if your dots are, let me just add a bit more paint. So as soon as your tool starts touching the palette, you don't have enough paint in there, then you need to add more. I've also had a student once where she wasn't dipping the tool, she was scooping the paint out. And that also didn't work. It didn't give her the dots that she really wanted. And also, once you put a dot down, don't continue going over it and over it again, because you will squash that bubble down. So this is some of the common problems when you do have wet paint and your dot doesn't come out perfectly. That's the problem. If your dots start becoming bigger in size in relation to what your first dot looked like, you guys can see the size difference there. That means that you've got paint buildup on your tool, which means that the paint is starting to dry on your tool. So you need to reset the size every now and then. So how I clean my tools is in the little water bowl, I will scrape it on the bottom. And then I use a paper towel to dry it. Because if it is still a little bit wet, let me show you. If you still have a bit of water on your tool and you do your next dot, it's gonna look, as you can see, it doesn't even want to put the paint down. So you will see a lot of my dots actually come out like that. So you don't want to do that either. So your tool has to be 100% dry when you do dot it. Let me just, because now I've got too much water in here. The other thing you need to do is, I've seen people, I call them cheats, is if they make a dot and then they move on directly to the next dot and the next one. So you can see they are starting to go down in size, and also the paint amount is going down. So you need to redip your tool into the paint with every single dot you make, like that. All right. Then when it comes to using bigger tools specifically, now I'm going to be using the 13mm. That one was, I think I used the 6mm for these practice dots. This one is the 13mm, so it is the biggest of them all. For these ones, this paint amount is not enough, because remember that we need to dip our tool in so that it goes over the side about that deep, which means that we need to add a lot more paint. So I'm going to be adding quite a bit of paint. Let's call it about that much. Okay. And then dipping my tool as deep in there as you can see. It's about as much as I put on there. And then I'm going to put my dot down. Now what I've discovered with a lot of the bigger dots, you need to, also if your dots come out skew, you need to hold down your paper, is that with the bigger dots sometimes, now I press really hard in order to show you guys this, sometimes you don't get the bubble because the surface is so big. Now what I do with that is I call it double dotting. So I'll take it like this, and I will not put the tool completely down. I just want to give it that extra paint that I've added to it to give it a nice bubble like that. All right, so that's for the bigger tools. Mine usually come out looking pretty good. Just hold down the paper here. There we go. They usually come out looking like that. So that was just for an example to show you guys. But if it doesn't come out like that, then you just want to double dip and then just add extra paint like that to give it. This is also handy if your bubble is not in the center. You can do this exact same technique just to move the paint around and to get it right there. Then I want to show you guys walking the dot, or as my students refer to, walking the dog. So yes, that's me. That's my style, walking the dog. For this practice, I'm going to use my green tool. If yours is a different color, the one with the really, really big ball, that's the one we're going to be using for this exercise. Walking the dog is quite easy and it's a lot of fun. What I do is I dip my tool about 80% deep. You don't want to go over the ball, you still want to be in the ball. And from there, you're going to make a few consecutive dots. So say, for instance, I say walk the dog 5 times. Then I'm going to make 5 dots. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you can see that they diminish in size as you go. Now we can play around with spacing as well. So we just redip. Also keep this tool as up straight as you possibly can. And now we can play with the spacing. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Can make them a little bit longer, or you can condense them a little bit more, because now the dots are getting smaller, which means that your spacing needs to compress as well. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you can even go 6. By 7 you're going to start running out of paint, and the same thing counts here. If you're going to press too hard, okay, you're going to see that because you're pressing so hard, the metallic ball actually leaves holes in your dotting. Okay, so you need to be gentle with these tools. Don't take out your stress on these tools. Just be calm, relax. This is supposed to be a fun activity. Go and meditate. Just relax yourself down, because I know that we are all stressed out in life. Okay, so that is walking the dog. What you can also do with walking the dog is just use the big ball as a practice. We can quickly switch to the other side, to the small ball side, and then just walk the dog with that as well. So you can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is also great for your really, really smaller surfaces. You can also walk the dog. And that goes for the other tools as well, for the different sizes that we have on those tools as well. I want to see if this paint has dried out a little bit. I'm going to use the 6mm tool again. Here you can see that the paint is starting to get a little bit, can you see that, those little veins? Almost looks a little bit veiny, because I poured that paint out earlier just so I can show you guys there. Can you see what the dots look like? They don't look like those nice round ones that we've got there. You can see they start looking veiny. That's when you know that your paint is starting to dry out a little bit, and that's when I usually add fresh paint. So when I do add fresh paint, so this is the dry one, when I do add fresh paint, I add it on top like that. Then I want you guys to make sure, so you need to rinse your tool after you've done a dry dot. So as soon as you do your first dot that doesn't look right, just add fresh paint and then you can dot over that one. But now I'm not going to push the tool in to pick up the dry paint that's underneath. I want to stick to the fresh paint that I've added on top in order to use that. And then you can just go back and you can go and fix your dots by just dotting over them again. So you can always go back and correct whatever doesn't look right when it comes to the dotting and if something is off. Okay, there we go. So we can just carry on with our dotting like that. Next up, I want to show you guys alternating dots. So here we've got a nice straight line of dots. Alternating means that when you go in between those two dots and you add a dot there, in between those two, adding one, in between those two, adding one. So I'm going to build a little pyramid if you guys want to build one too, just to show you the alternate spacing and how that works. Like, so here you can see the alternate spacing like that. And this is a technique that we use with a lot of the dotting things. There's a lot we can do with alternate spacing, but it's also important to get your spacing correct with this. And the reason we also want nice and tight spacing is because else your design is going to expand way quicker than everybody else's, and you're going to run out of space pretty quickly. So we want to keep it as compact as we possibly can. So we've just built a little bit of a triangle on that side, right? Now, see, my paint's getting dry. Go, just fix that one. So there we've got another triangle again, but we can actually make this a little bit of a double-sided triangle. So now we have a little diamond. A lot of fun to play with, so you guys need to just play around with it. Just start dotting and just do some practice dots, and that will start getting you comfortable with the dotting technique itself. And then, yeah, next time I will show you guys exactly how we do the planning. We're going to start doing and working on a canvas, and I'll show you guys how that works. So thank you so much for joining me for today. If you guys would like to add some more comments or questions in the comment section below, you can do that. Thank you for joining me on this magical journey. I'm looking forward to seeing you guys again next time. Stay dotty, stay magical. Goodbye.
Every single day